back to
Roundtable Combatives, running your favorite new podcast and all things martial arts.
We're gonna go with that. I ain't worried about it. All right. So first off, thanks to our sponsors, ohanahosting.com.
Yes, we appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely. So today here we're with Myron. How do you pronounce your last? I don't want to mess it up.
It's Myron Gaudet.
Gaudet. Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to.
It's
mess
Cajun
it up,
name.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm right there.
Awesome, Myron. It's good to have you. Thank you for coming.
I appreciate it.
I understand you have a lot, and we're talking before. You have a lot that we can discuss about.
Sure.
Let's start off with just you. Let's a little background about yourself and what you do. And
well, I was born and raised in New Orleans. I started martial arts when I was 10 years old, and I never stopped. I've been a police officer now for the last 28 years. So I've worked locally, and I've also worked internationally. I spent some of my police career overseas working for the United Nations CivPol program, which is done under the State Department here for the United States. I've been in a wide variety of police units. So, I mean, field training officer, academy instructor, patrol sergeants, motors, detectives. I mean, I've been around the block. I've been doing this for a long time. As far as martial arts, Japanese jiu-jitsu is where my actual rank is. But I'm mostly known as a striking coach, boxing, kickboxing. I've done a lot of sambo. I was a high school wrestler, but I've been in martial arts literally since as long as I can remember. It's always been a part of my life. On top of that, I love to travel. I think I've been now to 33 countries.
Awesome.
So, awesome. Been all over the world. I've seen a lot of different cultures. Enjoy that a lot. I live right now in Metairie with my wife and my 3 little rescue dogs, which I love very much. They're my parents. You know, I'm their parents. Excuse me. Yeah. And I have one son who is 22, and he's in the fire academy right now.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I told him there's no way he's doing this dumb police shit. He's gonna be a fireman. So yeah.
It just seems like it's been a worse and worse time after the last few years. You know,
it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because I just had this conversation. Everybody believes that it's a bad time to be the police. Everyone will say, "Man, it's the worst time in the world to be the police." I don't agree with that. I actually think it's the best time to be the police, even though I wouldn't recommend it to my kid, because I think his attributes will be much better as a fireman.
Right.
But I can say this. I think it's the best time to be the police for a lot of reasons. There's so much technological change right now that's going on. I've seen this job change and shift so much in the last 10 years. Just the integration of technology, the integration of new training. I mean, hell, just the integration of jiu-jitsu into police training. Right. That's making the profession much better and
safer.
It's making it safer. And for the longest time, administrations didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And I fought that battle for quite a while. And I still, to this day, fight that battle about trying to make them understand why this is a good thing.
Yeah.
But on top of just the jiu-jitsu or any of that, right now is the best time to be the police because of the change. A kid who comes into this profession right now is going to be, after a few years, he's going to be one of the highest trained public safety professionals in history.
Yeah.
He's going to be a mental health expert. He's going to be, he's going to understand tactics. He's going to understand everything about communication. He's going to understand how to de-escalate things better than ever before. All of this training is coming together. Now, a lot of agencies haven't put it together yet, but all of it exists, and it's starting to wind itself together to make this job a whole lot different and a whole lot better.
Well, I think in the past they didn't realize you needed to be all that.
Right.
You know, all those things.
100%.
It was just, they thought of only just, law enforcement and putting away bad guys, but not the, like they say, the psychology, the mental aspect of it.
It's huge. That's absolutely huge. When I first started policing back in the 90s, that wasn't at the forefront of the focus.
Right.
Criminality was, but now at the same time, if you see what we're dealing with now, the vast majority of it has a mental health component. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to go very far in this job.
Right.
And so again, whether you like that or you don't like it, it's part of the evolution of what this is all about. And by all of this stuff coming together, I think that it's really making it a lot more positive.
Right.
So again, that's my unpopular belief, but I do think it's a useful belief.
No, I totally, the way you explain it, I totally agree. Now, I think now there's more training and better training that's going to be implemented, you know?
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
now you're also thinking about the fact that you got drones now and facial recognition software and all that stuff where you actually can find out exactly who you're talking to.
All of that is coming together. I've seen it all working together. Yeah.
I guess what's really meant when people say that it's the image by the general public.
Right.
Is the worst or the worst that it can be as far as, you know,
it depends where you are though. I mean, it really does. If you go in most suburbs, the image of the police is excellent. Yeah. And I can tell you right now, I mean, I generally do not have any kind of public backlash when I work. It's just not something I've experienced like I know they have in the big cities. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, individuals, politics, and I'm not getting into any of that. I'm just saying my own personal experience. I don't have that kind of backlash. Most people support us.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's the narrative that's pushed is that it's
an agenda coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Right. So what you were saying in your bio, you worked overseas. What was that program again you were working?
It's called CivPol.
CivPol?
Yeah. So I was working as a young policeman. I think at the time I was working, when I got the call, I think I was working in a gang unit. And I got a call from the State Department asking me would I be interested in going overseas to work in a contracting role for the United Nations. And at the time I had just gone through a divorce and I was like, overseas, policing? Absolutely, sign me up. So I ended up in the next few days, I ended up on a plane to DC and I went through a 2-week-long process of like, you know, applying the psychiatric exams, all that kind of stuff, physical exams, things like that. Passed it all, and right from there, I was overseas. I landed in Kosovo. So I was supposed to go for 6 months. I ended up staying 3 years.
All right. How long ago was that?
That was in the early 2000s. I was there between 2003 and 2006.
Right.
So, yeah.
So how'd you like the experience?
I thrived in that experience. I loved it a lot. I actually wanted to stay overseas and I wanted to continue to contract en route. Right. But what brought me back here was when Hurricane Katrina hit, I had to come back. The sheriff's office was just in disarray. Everything was in disarray. Yeah. I mean, and not only that, my family had lost a lot. Yeah. And I couldn't stay out. I had to come back.
Right.
Unfortunately, but at the same time, sometimes you have to put other people in front of you.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's your theme in life as an officer. I mean,
no, absolutely.
Seems like you're always doing.
I consider myself service oriented. I really do. Yeah. Right. So
awesome. So, and you said you're in martial arts since you were 10 years old, right?
That's 40 years.
40. Yeah. So,
love it.
Right.
Not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. I think martial arts is one of those things that it, you know, it just grips you and you just can't get away from it. You know, it becomes your lifestyle. It becomes you.
It does. Well, it's not something you do. It's part of who you are.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's a good way to put it. So the other thing too, that I see going on right now, so we've all known since the 90s, MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu have revolutionized the way we train. Okay. And there's no argument about that. Right. However, what I think that we have possibly lost is the fact that martial arts is not only about fighting or belts. It's a much richer experience. Now, would I go back to the way we used to train? No, but I think we can still add the other aspects of it today. I think that if it's coached properly, it's one of the greatest tools for personal growth that you can possibly have.
And so what are you talking about as far as, I'm not trying to say spiritual, but like the whole all around, just not just the physical aspect of it, but the mental.
Well, if you want to call it spiritual, you can call it that. If you want to call it, you know, you're accessing something higher, you can call it that. But I'm going to put it like this. When you train for real, and when I say for real, when you actually do stuff against resistive people and you're applying real techniques under stressful conditions, you start to realize that you are more than just the sum total of your physical parts. You realize that most of the things that really matter are not necessarily the objective things. They're the subjective things that you can't really measure, like grit, okay? Like drive, like passion. You can't put those things in a wheelbarrow and measure them, right? However, you gain those things through years and years and years of diligent practice.
Right.
You don't gain those things right away. And that's one reason why it's a very good thing that the path to black belt should be as long as it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And these people who get these black belts, these fly by night, I mean, I think that's horrendous. I think that's terrible, because for you to become something like a black belt, that requires way more than just fighting.
Right.
That requires commitment. That requires service to everyone in your gym. That requires teamwork, community. It requires you to go out on a limb and coach people. It requires you to do so much. And at the same time, you can't do that in a short amount of time.
Right.
It's an added thing that adds up, and it becomes exponentially more powerful.
Well, I think it's the struggle is what develops you as the person.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
If anything, not even just martial arts, but anything handed to you, you don't appreciate it more.
No,
you know,
definitely
so
not.
It's
definitely.
I think you put more merit into it. You know?
And what's crazy to me is that, like, even though we have come so far in training, there's still so many wannabes, and there's still so many people who are so full of crap that are successful, and it just boggles my mind how that still happens.
Well, I have a theory. Well, it's not really a theory. I guess it's common knowledge, but it's social media. Social media has just made it so easy for anybody and everybody to put forth an opinion or training method or whatever, and you don't know who they are, but people buy it. Because people buy anything.
They want to believe. It's kind of like the X-Files things. I want to believe. It's like that. I want to believe that I can knock somebody out without touching them. I want to believe that I can, get a black belt with little effort. You know, I want to believe that there's effortless power. Right.
The thing is, it's all pressure testable. Yeah. It's easy to get in there. It's like, all right, 100%. Well then look, absolutely, you and I, we're going to go now and we're going to see if your belief matches reality.
Right. I'm going to say this. I did not have a long competitive history. I did compete a little bit in my early years, but it wasn't part of my overall mission. Like, I mean, I was more on the law enforcement side, and I was applying my martial arts for that particular aim. But I can tell you this, that I would love to go to some of these places and pressure test these people. Because, and again, I am not going to sit here and tell you, okay, we have a ghost.
Yeah.
No, but
it's out of the frame.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I, am as successful as a competitor as all of our great Louisiana MMA athletes. No, I'm not. But I can box a little bit. And I can kickbox a little bit, and I'm not too bad grappling either. So I can tell you that I would love to go to places like that and just like pressure test stuff like that. And because it's ridiculous. It really is.
Well, I mean, you could tell the difference between somebody that maybe they're not a competitor, but they are somebody that's trained a while.
Yeah.
Versus all of a sudden you're going with somebody that's saying that they're this and they're that. And then when you grapple with them and you notice, dude, you acting like a white belt that just walked in 2 months later.
Right.
So you can't fake it. You cannot.
The mats don't lie. That's what I love about mats. They don't lie.
Fake it. No. You can't fake boxing. You can't fake kickboxing, and you can't fake jiu-jitsu. It's just wrestling too. I mean, you can take it all. I mean, these kids that are high school wrestlers, I mean, you could take a mediocre high school wrestler and put them against some of these frauds, and they're going to just wipe the floor with, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
So
talking about grit, wrestlers are grit because the whole practice, you're just constantly moving. There's no sitting on top of somebody resting. You're just, you're trying to pin them the whole time. It's a struggle. It's a fight. And that's why wrestlers grow up to be successful people.
Right. I'll say this. It's probably an unpopular opinion, another unpopular opinion. I think that it's easier to take a wrestler and teach him jiu-jitsu than a jiu-jitsu guy and teach him wrestling.
Well, that's actually very popular. I mean, Darren's told us that so many times.
Well, I think it's also true with boxing. I think it's a lot easier to be a boxer who kicks than a kickboxer. I think if you do that, I think if your boxing is really sharp, your kickboxing will be really sharp.
Yeah, I mean, the punches set up the kicks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no. But I've had people disagree with that. I really have. And I'm like, okay, well, it's just in my experience, that's what I've seen.
Right. Yeah, well, people have opinions whenever they form or they train a certain way.
Right.
They just want to believe that way.
Theirs is the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's subjective.
And it could be for them. It could be for them.
Exactly.
It could be for them. They could be a master at what they do. It just mean,
Yeah.
There's truth in everything.
I'm going to also, I'll add this to this part of the conversation. we talked about like things that are a little bit higher, like spiritual kind of stuff. That even though I do believe there's a lot of frauds out there that try to say that that's what they do, the thing is that there are martial arts that are more oriented towards that, but they're not fighting arts.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really, especially in America, we look at something and we try to view it through the lens of our culture. And it doesn't always work like that. A perfect example is Aikido. Okay. Aikido is not about fighting. I tell people that all the time, but it doesn't mean it's useless to study. It's not about fighting. Okay. When you look at Aikido and you see how it works, this was something that was designed by an old man who was essentially a mystic who had studied martial arts all of his life. He understood the history of Budo in Japan, and he understood how violent and crazy it was.
Yeah.
But he also lived at a time where things were changing drastically, and Japan was trying to move out of that warlike place. What he tried to do was take things like the moves, the connection to Shinto and Zen, and like the ritualistic part of the martial arts combined with the mobility and flexibility and flow. And he understood so he tried to create something that replicated the mindset of a warrior, but without necessarily with the violence.
Without the violence.
Right. It's not a fight. And everybody looks at it and thinks, well, that doesn't work in a fight. Well, no, it doesn't work in a fight. It's not supposed to. It never was. Right.
So essentially it's more a goal through meditative.
It's a meditative it's a moving meditation that is basically what you might call living Zen. It's the epitome of yin and yang when you understand it and you see how a good Aikido demonstration goes. But again, you have to take that out of the context of fighting. Yeah. And here's another good example. If you are an older person and you can move at a high level in Aikido, your quality of life will be quite good. Okay. You may not be getting smashed on the mat in BJJ or beat up in boxing or whatever, but if you can move like that, your quality of life will be much greater than the average person. Right. So it's not useless to study something like that, but you have to also understand that that's what you're doing. You can't try to call that something it's not. Right. And I think that's a good, it's another art that's a lot like that. Capoeira. Capoeira has so many attributes that are valuable for fighting and fitness and coordination and balance and all of that.
Cardio.
Yeah. Cardio, but it's not fighting. Right. It's basically a demonstration that's come together, and it has skills that are relevant to fighting, but it's not fighting. Right.
Yeah. I seen a video the other day. It was two capoeira fightings, and that guy did that spinning kick and all, and knocked the person straight out.
Yeah. Well, again, there are elements in it. There's elements in Aikido that are valuable in combat, but you can't look at Aikido as it's practiced and put it in the same category as combat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in Aikido they still use Kasushi principles, off balance.
Oh, absolutely. Totally. I mean, so it's what I just try to always tell people to put those kind of arts in the right perspective.
Yeah. And my take is just like pretty much thing is in fitness. There's no such. There's no really bad. It's just good, better, and best.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And it's relative to the person.
Any movement's going to be good.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, if you're somebody who's getting older and you want to maintain your flexibility, right? I mean, Tai Chi, Aikido is probably a really good option. Right. I'll tell you this: when I visited China in the early 2000s, I spent about a month in China, and I can tell you that you would see in the parks in the morning 1,000 people doing Tai Chi. And I can tell you what, none of those people were overweight. They were all very mobile, all flexible, and a lot of them were training it well into their late 70s.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, so how do you argue with that? I mean, it's so in that perspective, if you understand it for what it is, knock your lights out.
Well, and then not only the physical, but I guarantee you they're more at peace mentally.
Oh, well, very much. Well, you see, that's another thing too, is that the longer you study this stuff, there's a little shift that happens. And for me, it happened a while back, but I realized it's real easy to hurt people, but it's not as easy to help people heal, and yourself included. Yeah. And if you view your training through the lens of self-perfection, it becomes, it's a more profound thing on a longer timeline rather than just hurting somebody. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to hurt somebody. hit to an armbar, punch somebody in the head, do something like that. Those are really, really rudimentary things. But if you understand the martial arts culturally and what they should be doing, they should be helping us heal rather than helping us hurt. We don't need any more violence or confrontation. What we need is something that brings us together and makes us stronger as people. And I think that if you view it in that perspective, martial arts gets a lot more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see, especially people, once they get closer to retirement age, you're trying to do something to take stress off of you.
Right.
Because our bodies, especially as police officers and stuff like that, or even martial artists and fighters and stuff, the constant amount of stress you're constantly putting yourself into. And then you get to the point to where you retire, and then a lot of people sit down. Well, when you sit down, that's when your body starts shutting down and dying.
That's correct.
So
Yes, absolutely.
it's just like he was talking about with the constant movement, like Tai Chi, moving around, flexibility, stretching, just getting your body used to maybe not putting as much stress on it, but still getting up and moving.
So
not just sitting down and shutting down.
Here's a good way to think about that, what you're talking about. So your body affects your mind, and your mind affects your body in ways that we don't fully understand yet. Like the how profound of a concept that is. I think they're just like neuroscience and psychology. They're just starting to kind of grasp a little bit of this about how your mind affects your body and how your body affects your mind. And what the bridge is breathing. Okay. So if you understand controlled, regular, rhythmic breathing, and you can do that in a crisis situation, you're going to find that you can make a lot better decisions. Right. Because your body becomes more relaxed. Lots of things happen inside where the panic goes away. Yeah. All right. And that's a perfect example of body and mind working together with breathing as the bridge. Yeah. But I always tell people, they ask me to give them an example of how body and mind work together. And I say, well, your mind can affect your body. And I said, imagine this. If I put you on a 8-inch balance board and it's 6 inches above the ground, you could walk that all day long. Yeah. But the second we put that 40 feet in the air, it requires the same physical skill. But what's the difference? It's your perception. Yeah. Your mind can literally shut you down if you don't know how to work with that. Absolutely. And so in the world of martial arts, understanding the right mindset when you apply things in the real world is everything. That's so linked. And then later on in life, that movement, that flow, the ease of your mobility, that affects your mind. Your physical flow affects your as far as like things like Alzheimer's and all kinds of, cognitive diseases that you get as you get older. If you're physically moving around still and you're really training, you're not going to have those issues. Or you'll have them a lot less than other people would, because your body and your mind work together. Now, on the mind side, if you're not meditating, you should be. You absolutely should. I am a daily meditator, and I have been for 30 years. And I can tell you that it's so strong for what it does for you, and the clarity that it brings you. It makes your training better. It makes your work life better. It teaches you to balance your life better. And the best thing I can tell you about it is the clarity. It just gives you a certain kind of clarity that you don't have unless you're doing it. Right. There's a lot of research on it right now.
So what do you do for, you say you meditation every day. What do you do for meditating?
Okay. So usually what I practice is what's called Zazen meditation, which is the meditation that's most directly connected to the Japanese martial arts. Okay. And you do it in basically a kneeling position that's called Seiza, which you've probably seen in Judo or Aikido or Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, you do it in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. Basically your kneeling posture. Yeah. And what you do is you align your spine, you tuck your chin, and you bring your hands together in a little circle like this, and you lay it in your lap. The posture affects the mindset. When you have the posture and you concentrate on holding the posture, it will make the mindset come, right? Because body affects mind, mind affects body. When the mindset comes and now you're affecting your body, it's like this loop, right? Yeah. And when you understand that and you're maintaining the body posture and you're maintaining the mind, what happens is all the extraneous thoughts, all the things that bounce around in your head, they start to clear. A really good analogy is a snow globe. If I take a snow globe and I shake it up and I see all the little pieces of snow, that's usually what your mind is like every day. You got thoughts going all over the place. And when you first start meditating, you're going to have that. You're going to sit down and you can be like, man, I'm wasting my time. I'm sitting here, man, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to go and run errands. I got to go and do this for work. That's all normal. let it happen, let it flow, let that just go. And what happens is
don't fight it. It makes it
just
worse.
like the snow globe. When you set it down, it all settles. And what do you get? You get clarity, right? It works exactly like that. You just have to put the time in.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I do. If I can only do it for 5 minutes, I'm doing it for 5 minutes. If I can do it for an hour, I'll do it for an hour.
Right.
It just kind of depends on the flow of the day. But the main thing is you're doing it, right? It's kind of like jujitsu. If you're not doing it, I mean, you're not going to get better at it, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'd rather train for 5 minutes in jujitsu every day than not train, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, yeah.
I'll say we're talking about mind clarity and how the mind affects the body. One thing I'm always teaching with the students whenever we're doing choke defenses, especially stuff like guillotines. One of the most common things people do whenever you get one on them is start panicking.
They panic. Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you panic, your heart rate's going to pick up at that point. Once your heart rate picks up, you get tunnel vision.
Chain reaction.
You're going to start losing your fine motor skills. Then your gross motor skills go. And before you know it, because you
full panic attack.
You may have practiced the way to get out of it 1,000 times, but you panicked. You forgot it. It's not going to work. But if you just sit there and like remain calm, it's like, all right, look, I've been here before. They got this choke on me. I can work my way out of it. And it's because you don't panic.
Yeah. I have a theory on tunnel vision and auditory exclusion. And I think that we put them in a category that they're bad. And I actually think that they're good if you understand them.
I mean, the adrenaline affects your body.
If it's focused right.
Well, here's what my theory is about it. Now, in the case that you're talking about, when it causes panic, it's absolutely bad, 1,000%. But a lot of times the panic comes because they're not understanding what's happening.
Right.
Now, the thing I think about tunnel vision is not a physical thing. It's not like something that happens in your eyes. It's something that happens in your mind. The same thing is true with auditory exclusion. I like to call auditory exclusion selective hearing.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a good example about auditory exclusion. If you're on a police scene and it's chaotic and crazy, you've trained yourself, if you're a veteran cop, to hear the radio.
Yeah.
A fighter, it could hear there's a crowd, it's screaming, all that, everybody's yelling and hollering while the fight's going on. They hear their cornerman.
Yeah.
And selective hearing. That's a good trait. Now, the thing about tunnel vision is this. In the natural world, I believe that peripheral vision is actually faster than direct vision. And I think that what tunnel vision is, it brings your peripheral vision in so that you can perceive things a whole lot faster. It's not about being fast, it's about seeing fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And that's something that I was told years ago in martial arts. It's not about being fast, it's about seeing fast.
Yeah.
And tunnel vision does that when it comes together, brings that peripheral vision in. And if you know how to leverage that, the same thing with the selective hearing, it becomes part of your martial art.
Yeah. That's right. So that's one of the main things in our knife fighting is, our direct vision is the knife. We don't want to lose track of the knife, but everything is peripheral.
Yeah,
that's how we judge where we're moving, what else might be coming into play, or if they have two knives, that is a big part of what we practice to not get cut.
Well, the thing about knife fighting, and I don't even like to use the term knife fight, because if you're in a knife fight, something has gone very wrong.
Completely wrong. Yeah.
Very wrong. Or you're doing something really stupid. Okay. I had an encounter with a knife. It had to be like 2010, and it was really nasty. I was on duty and I was working, and there was a guy that was trying to break into a car. He was trying to smash the window with a cinder block. Anyway, myself and a security guard confronted him, and he pulled a knife on me, and I was too close. I really shouldn't have been as close as I was. However, with a little bit of luck, a little bit of skill, a little bit of grace, and somebody must have been watching over me, I was able to defend that attack to get him to the ground. I utilized a Japanese jiu-jitsu thing. Now, could I do it again? I have no idea. All I know is for 3 days after, I was shaking because the adrenaline that happened. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was some brilliant looking, beautiful thing like out of a movie. No, I was able to get a hold of that wrist, and I was able to forcefully twist and bend that wrist and get him directed to the ground where I got the knife away from him.
And I think that's where some people mess up with their training, is they think that, I'm going to defend this every time.
No,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times luck has a lot to do with it.
Luck had a lot to do with it. And the fact that I was seeing fast and not being fast that made a big difference. I mean, at the same time, I didn't get hurt, but man, I tell you, I look back on that sometimes and I try to explain it to people like that couldn't have gone the same way all the time. Right. Like you said, there's almost no way. I train with knives too. I train with sticks and knives. I do all that. But at the same time, I realize that it's not like you can't use the word always and you can't use the word never because things are not always going to happen.
You're dealing with another human being that's unpredictable.
There's an unpredictable asset to it. The other thing too was this guy had a lot of intent. Yeah, he wasn't like what you might call a trained knife fighter, right? And I mean, what is that anyway? But at the same time, he had the intent to pull that knife out and try to stab a uniformed policeman. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And at the same,
sometimes that's the worst. Just the intent.
Exactly. I mean, it was ugly. It really was. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful that I'm here from it because I could have got really hurt from it. But again, it's I guess just the right conditions came together for me in that.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people in martial arts, they're actually training to fight somebody else in their martial art.
Right.
Yeah. What about this untrained person that's not doing what you expect them to do?
Right. Okay. Here's my thoughts on that. So whenever I teach self-defense, and I do that a lot, I teach self-defense workshops. Yeah. And I often get people, I mean, I'm in this community. I mean, I'm in the boxing, kickboxing, MMA. I mean, you always see me refereeing. So I am constantly surrounded by combat athletes. Yeah. But I can tell you that whenever I teach self-defense, there's one thing that I focus on, and I tell them this. If you and I are boxing or you and I are doing jujitsu, we have the same goal. Yeah. Okay. And that drastically changes the setup where let's say you get a young lady where somebody's trying to drag her into a van. Her goal is going to be really different. And so what does it mean to win? Like in jujitsu, we know what it means to win. You tap out or you win on points. The same thing in MMA. I mean, you might get judged the winner or you might knock them out or submit them. But the rules of winning, like the winning is very clarified. But in the real world, if you get into some kind of situation, you have to really open up your mind to understand what winning might entail. Yeah. Because the goal is very different. Winning might mean getting away.
Right. Okay? Yeah.
Winning might be getting the person in handcuffs. Winning might be, having to kill the person. I mean, I hate to say that, but it just depends on what you're dealing with. Right. But in the self-defense world, if you go at it with that in mind first, that the goal is different, your training will change. Yeah. And you can engineer scenarios based on that.
Right. Yeah. So I remember it was online. I can't remember what group it was, but someone posed the question. Do you think, how did they pose it? Sport training helps self-defense or self-defense helps sport training? And it was a big discussion. Everybody's going on.
I'll tell you this. They're symbiotic. They're symbiotic. And here's the thing. You should be training in combat sports. Like if you are a martial artist, you are doing yourself a disservice if you're not doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, boxing, wrestling, or kickboxing. You are doing yourself a disservice. However, that doesn't mean that your combat sport is going to protect you in the real world. Yeah. I've seen black belts get knocked out. Okay. I mean,
well, one thing that we started implementing over at Cyclone with the new fundamental program that we have, anything I'm doing, I want to see, does this work if somebody's attempting to punch me at the same time?
Sure.
Because a lot of times in sport, we'll have our hands protecting certain places because, again, punching is not even a possibility. It's
not even a possibility.
Where on the street, it's always going to be that possibility. So now where do I want to put my hands at? And it's going to change things a little bit.
Well, I've seen it in MMA, referee in MMA. I see people who have a high jiu-jitsu pedigree and they're predicted to do very well in MMA. And then guess what? All of a sudden, the wake-up call, they got punched in the face and now things are not the same.
Right.
But that goes back with Tonley versus who was that? He used to be a member of the Dan Hurt Death Squad. Gary Tonin. And Gary Tonin went for the heel hook, and Tonley just punched him in the face.
Right, exactly.
And it's funny that he won with that last night.
But so here's another take on that. Like self-defense also has to be distilled down to the simplest possible concept.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of somebody. If you come to me and say, I've never trained before, I'm an adult and I want to learn self-defense, the first thing I'm going to teach you is basic bare knuckle boxing. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that as you get better at that, we can expand on that knowledge. Yeah. But in the real world, if you understand that the goal may be different, you can take some you can take a couple of skills. If you understand how to block a punch and how to throw a jab and a cross, and you know how to do it, when to do it, and you have the balls to do it, that'll get you out of a lot of trouble. So as long as you understand how the law applies and when you're justified to do it, right? I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do, you know, some spinning X guard into some crazy triangle to understand self-defense. Now, I'm not saying those things are useless to train in. No, they're fun. We love to do those things. But I mean, you know, it's been a long time since I've seen a jump spinning kick used in, you know,
in some kind of,
in a real
fight. And I don't think my body wants to do that anymore at 43 years old. So,
I mean,
well, that's what I was getting at is I believe training, regardless, like I said, good, better, and best. So any training is good, right? But if you're only sport training, doesn't mean you're going to survive the attack.
No, you know? that's totally true. Well, the other thing too is just look at it like this: in a competition, you're relatively equally matched, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
your weight class.
You can walk out of here and have somebody confront you that's completely different body size and whatever. And if you think that doesn't matter, you're crazy. I mean, it does matter. I mean, it's true that skill can overcome size. That is true. But at the same time, if you don't understand how to train for that because you've never traded up training partners, I mean, you need to do that.
Yeah. And then also sport doesn't prepare, or not necessarily always, most sport doesn't prepare you for the weapon. Somebody's having a weapon. That's a drastic difference.
I'm going to say this too. That's a really, really difficult topic. And the thing is, because there are people that have tried, like if you look at things like Dog Brothers and you look at some of these Pakiti organizations that get rubber knives and basically it looks like MMA while they're stabbing each other 50 times. I don't agree. I think that is actually harmful.
So that's the organization I'm with. He thinks that's ridiculous. You know, I'd say 90% of the FMA you see online, it's ridiculous because one you're not going to trade knife stabs.
No,
you're going to trade
usually
slashes.
The first ones.
Exactly. I mean, but you watch it and it looks like MMA with rubber knives.
Right.
It's totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not how that would play out in the real world. I mean,
I think you sent the video in here. Somebody did. It was a guy. I don't know if he was trying to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but all of a sudden he got stabbed in the stomach and he ended up bleeding out.
I think I sent one. Yeah. Maybe it was a guy it was a street fight and the guy tried to take him down.
Yeah, that was it.
Just stabbed him.
So I'm gonna say this about like the FMA. Like, I believe that the methods that if you see how they train in the Philippines, they don't think like that.
Yeah,
they think in terms of very, very meticulous training, where everything they're not thinking like a tournament. They're not thinking, and they don't think in terms of I'm going to pressure test this like a contest. They're thinking that I could die.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's why they're so meticulous with the way that they train. The other thing too, I think you might notice when you see, and this is not only Filipino instructors, but like certain Japanese instructors and Chinese instructors, the presence that they bring to the table is something that is very practiced. And the presence in the real world when they confront somebody is a huge part of that kind of confrontation.
Yeah.
And that carries with it a lot of things. So again, we talked at the beginning, you can't fake this stuff. Well, guess what? You can't fake that presence either.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
This goes back to, let's take this back a notch and go back to law enforcement training. And I'm going to show you how it relates. There's a big push all over the place. Oh, we have to train police officers in de-escalation. We have to train them in de-escalation. They have to learn how to de-escalate people. Correct. But you know what? Verbal de-escalation without the ability to physically do it if you have to is fake. And people sense that.
Right.
Okay.
One thing. So as being an instructor right now, whatever we're having a problem with, whenever we're doing simulations with our recruits and stuff like that, you'll see them get to the point, because most of the class they have at the very beginning is de-escalation this, community service this, community policing this, and all that. And then you'll see, sir, ma'am. And then whenever you get on the streets, you'll see the whole thing. Trying to de-escalate. Well, there comes to a certain point where you actually need to go hands-on in order to de-escalate.
Right.
But they're afraid to. They don't have the ability to or the confidence to. And they actually try to de-escalate themselves. And what happens is the reverse the situation escalated because they could have went hands on beforehand.
Correct.
Right.
Bring them down, get them in cuffs, but yet now all of a sudden we're in a lethal threat encounter.
Or they didn't know when it was necessary to actually get physical.
Well, physical restraint is a part of the escalation. And I think that's being lost in a lot of the rhetoric that's going around right now. And but take that back to what I'm talking about, to things in the real world, like these old school instructors that project that presence. You can't fake that. You know, like look at some of these people, like some of these guys in the Philippines, and look at somebody like these older Japanese instructors. Look at their posture, look at their poise, look at their purpose, the way that they address people. That's a real part of this. And when you train the right way, you can de-escalate things a lot easier because you don't have to fight. Like it was, I mean, Sun Tzu said it best. He said the highest skill in the martial arts is not having to fight. And he understood that. So the communication, the de-escalation, those things come along with practical training, but a lot of that gets overlooked now because they think that, training martial arts is going to make them more violent. No, it's going to make them less violent.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So one thing I could say is my use of forces went down when I started taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I actually started getting confident because that confidence comes out, like you're talking about projection. Whenever I'm working, if I'm just slouched down and I'm a little timid, the other person can be like, oh, well, I can mess this person over. Right. Versus now I'm standing more upright, I'm more posture. I'm like, all right, you think that's what's going to happen? And I'm just more confident about myself. So and that person, they don't want to test you now.
Here's a good example. We always say it in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We say it in every martial art. The most dangerous thing in the world is a
confident person.
White belt.
White belt. Yeah, well, because they don't know what they're doing. They're spastic.
A white belt is the most dangerous thing in the gym. And you know what? A white belt policeman is the most dangerous thing on the street because that's the person that is going to be more likely to use or misuse a tool on their belt or force because they don't have the confidence. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't understand how not to panic. And a lot of these unjustified things that you might see around the country and actually around the world are a direct result of that. Is like you can take it right back to a white belt is the most dangerous thing there.
Because I mean, as a white belt, what do you think? Oh, I got to put more force into this arm bar.
Exactly, away, and that's the last thing you need to do.
Exactly,
right? You know, right. So, I mean, that's definitely that goes into what we're talking about.
It's funny. It's like everybody who's done jiu-jitsu for however long went through that same path. We're all that first day, the first weeks or whatever. We're all exhausted, can't breathe. Sucking wind,
and that's after like 20 seconds over an 8-minute round.
Right. And now you don't even breathe really.
So Rennie and I, we came up together. We were both white belts together, and like at practice, you'd see after we're going with each other, like our front of our heads are just flat because we're just mashing into each other the whole time and not knowing anything else other than, hey, I'm going to apply force. I don't have any technique, so I'm going to apply force. And you know what overcomes force? More force.
Muscle. That's right. Muscle. Well, the cool thing that's one thing about that differentiates Japanese jiu-jitsu. It differentiates it from Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is all about it's about the engagement. Japanese jiu-jitsu is actually about disengagement. Okay. So when you understand what the history of Japanese jiu-jitsu is, it was basically developed if you became disarmed or broke a weapon, but they understood that the first thing that you needed to do is arm yourself. Okay. So you're not trying to fight unarmed. The whole purpose was to rearm yourself.
Right.
So you had to disengage from an armed opponent to go and get to a safe spot to arm yourself. And so when you train in Japanese jiu-jitsu, you'll see a lot of the footwork that's involved. It's all about disengagement. Right. And that goes back to what does it take to win if we understand what win means. So it changes. And so I like to tell people who do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you should also study Japanese jiu-jitsu. That way you can have a more complete picture of what it might be to have a real confrontation if you do have to disengage. Right. You know, so.
Right. Well, you know what I think is the culture of Brazilian jiu-jitsu is it gets somewhat toxic in some people that they don't want to do anything else. You know, that's the best. That's it. You know,
but you know what? That's happened as long as I've been in martial arts. I saw that happen with the Korean arts too. That happened in the 80s.
Well, like any art that's popular. That's the one.
And I hate to see that. I really do. The politics and silliness and fighting, that's so useless. I mean, why are they doing that? I mean, you got to bring it back to what it's all about. And the thing is that if you got these organizations fighting with each other and everybody, I mean, man, that one of the worst things that could have ever happened to martial arts is that it became what I call a strip mall commodity.
Yeah.
Okay. Because in the real world, that's not what it is. It's far more valuable than that.
Right.
But if it's treated like a strip mall commodity, that's how you get a lot of that infighting. And that silliness. And I really do not pay attention to that.
Yeah. When it's franchised out, it's
man. Yeah. No, now I'll tell you, it's possible to make a good living as a martial arts instructor. I believe that fully because I am a living embodiment of that right now. I have no shortage of private lessons. I have no shortage of workshops. I have no shortage of group classes. You can make a very good living without participating in all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just politics.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've seen that happen with the Filipino stuff too. I mean,
it's bad. It's all bad with the Filipino stuff.
It's crazy.
What I like about my instructor, he just backs away from it all. Lets everybody else talk and do whatever, and he just focuses on himself, his organization, and teaching the authentic version of what he was taught.
In Filipino martial arts, I very much consider myself a student. I'm in no way an instructor. I do train in Filipino martial arts, but I do it on the side of what I coach. And because I always like to be doing something that I'm not good at to elevate myself. So I'm very much a student in Filipino, but I see it on the internet. I see the infighting and silly politics and all that, but I see it with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
It's everywhere.
So
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's one thing I will have to say though, based on the later 90s and then coming forward now, is you used to see a lot of people saying, well, this is a jiu-jitsu fighter, this is a boxer, this is a kickboxer. But now you're starting to see more people label themselves as a mixed martial artist. I'm going to try. I know I got a good ground game, but what about my stand-up game now? I need to make that a little bit more solid. Or I need to work over here. I need to work on my wrestling. I need to work on my takedown skills because in a street fight, I'm not just going to be able to sit on my butt.
Right.
So I think you're going to see an evolution even in the future further of where you're going to have, I think you're going to start to see like you're saying, more people are going to identify that way as less of any kind of single style.
Yeah.
But I also think that what we were talking about before, once it's more inserted like that higher aspect, that spiritual aspect, when you put those things together, you're going to see a martial art that's more powerful than anything we've ever really had.
Yeah.
Because I think that if you look at the different places of knowledge today and how they can be shared quickly, I think the evolution is there to create something that's more than we've ever had before.
Yeah.
And I think that I love to spearhead the fact that spiritual aspect needs to be inserted into martial arts. And I think that by taking our physical tactics and coaching it well and seeing how these students end up. I mean, think about it like this: the commitment that it takes to get a black belt versus the commitment that it takes to get a college degree. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm interviewing somebody and that person tells me that they got a degree in basket weaving or whatever, philosophy or whatever, I'm like, okay. And then I got another kid sitting across from me that says, you know what, I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Or judo or whatever. I mean,
pick at least 10 years right
a
now.
legitimate accredited martial art, and I'm going to be like, well, who's committed?
Who's committed?
I know that this kid is going to be,
right.
I know he's going to have critical thinking skills. I know that he's going to be very committed. I understand. I know that he's going to know his own limitations. There's
problem solving.
Things he can problem solve. And I don't
deal with stress.
Deal with stress. And I don't know that about the college kid.
Yeah. Exactly.
And now I do agree that maybe there's somebody with both of those qualifications.
Yeah.
Right.
All the better.
It's not that we're putting, when we say this, not that we're putting down college or college students. No. But there's just, we know for a fact, if you're that far in martial arts, you've achieved some kind of struggle, some kind of commitment.
You didn't quit.
You didn't quit.
The resiliency that it provides. I like to tell people this, and I get some hate when I say this. Martial arts does what a lot of religions claim to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that makes sense.
If your training space is sacred space, okay, and you start to understand that this makes me believe in myself more, it makes me stronger, it gives me more grit, it makes me more resilient, it allows me to understand a higher power because I am more than the sum total of my parts, it starts to sound a whole lot like a religion.
Yeah.
And then when you start to really see what you can do and how it elevates you over other people, it does. I mean, whether we want to admit it or not, it gives us a certain power over regular people. right? And it puts us in a different category because once you're trained, you can't go back.
Yeah.
And when you look at regular people that can't, I mean, just think about the first time you walked into a jiu-jitsu gym and you were a white belt and you just got smashed. I mean, you just got this, or a boxing gym. I mean, you just get smashed and you're like, man. And then you start to be that person and understand, like, you are a rung above.
Yeah.
So again, it starts to sound like a religion. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is a religion, but I'm going to tell you that it shares a lot of the same characteristics.
Right. Well, I think it's semantics, really, because the practice of what you're doing and what you're becoming is on par with a religion. It's just you don't call it a religion. You know?
I mean, well, you could.
Well, some people call it a religion.
I'll tell you what, I would argue if you go to China and look at Shaolin. Tell me that's not a religion.
Yeah,
that's 100%.
Well, that's
I mean, but again, what is it? It's through the modality of martial arts. Okay, those guys do things that, and I saw them because I saw them in person do it. I mean, I saw people in their 70s and 80s doing things that people here in their 20s and 30s can't do. Right. And most of that was calisthenic style things like push-ups and squats and like lifting weights and doing, stretching and mobility and stuff. But they're constantly active and they always train and they do spar and things like that. So again, but it all is put together in a spiritual context.
Well, and overall, their quality of life is better.
Yeah, definitely.
Than somebody who doesn't do any of that.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that's the goal. I mean, should be the goal of everybody is to have a good quality of life.
Well, I mean, that's going to come from martial arts and diet probably as well.
Yeah.
Well, here we go back to mind affects body, body affects mind.
Yeah.
When you feed your body correctly, your mind works better. I mean, there's lots of research on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what you put in, it's just like a computer, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
Same thing. You put in good stuff, you're going to get good results. I mean, I'm fortunate to have a wife that cooks all the time and cooks very well. And I mean, believe me, I feel that. I do, and I don't take it for granted one bit. So
I mean that like it all works synergistically.
I'll say we had Macy Bro on the show the other day, and as nutritionist, she was talking about stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's that's another problem with law enforcement. If you see these guys who all they eat is McDonald's and all they eat is this trash and stuff, I promise you that those are the same guys that are more likely to make bad decisions. I mean, think about that. It all sort of falls together. It all comes together in that lifestyle. Right?
Or the ones that are not, and they're not probably not training extra.
Right.
I mean, because when you're training or you're eating good, you want to do both. You know what I mean? Right. It makes you want to say, hey, I can't eat that because I'm doing all this for nothing.
I'll go so far as to tell you that a cop that doesn't do martial arts is like an engineer that doesn't do math. Okay? Like that is part of what makes you the professional that you are. And you really should put that in the category. Now, do I think you need to be like a super duper black belt? No. But I think you have to have a rudimentary training in something that
consistent training,
consistent, legitimate,
and not just martial arts. But what about cops that don't like? I know a bunch that don't even exercise.
That's exactly.
Now what's happening? Your body's running down. Now your mind's running. You're always tired. It's hard to work. Then you got the stress of the job on you. It just does a number on the body and the mind.
Right. They have a really good book that I recommend to police rookies, and it's called The Upside of Stress. It's written by a person named Kelly McGonigal. If you look it up on the internet, it's actually it's a life-changing book if you read it. And it talks about what stress is, how to get good at it. And it uses stress as a growth process. But again, you have to put it in the right context. Like you're talking about, if the rest of your lifestyle is crap, that you're not going to be able to do that. But if you put stress in the proper place, and understand it and understand how to leverage it to grow from it, it changes everything.
I mean, that's true. Stress is a good thing. The right stress.
Absolutely.
It's a great motivator.
It's all about how you frame it. It really is. I mean, think about people who have been shaped by traumatic events, and one might go completely the other way, and the other one might have grown from it tremendously. Right. And I mean, and I don't know that there's actually a way to predict who's going to be affected in what way, but at the same time, I have seen it work both ways, where a traumatic event makes somebody a whole lot stronger.
Absolutely. Well, that goes back to the whole thing of being resilient, so going through martial arts. The more struggle you go through,
more you can handle.
Yeah, the more you can handle, the
now,
better person you can become.
I do not mean to imply in any way, shape, or form that somebody who's been through a trauma that has not benefited from it is any less of a person.
No,
of
course not.
But I'm saying that I think that needs to be said too. It's like I'm not saying, oh well, you know, this happened to you, you should use it to go stronger. No, I mean we don't. That depends on the individual and it depends on what happened to them.
Yeah,
but. Again, we as martial artists, if we truly understand martial arts, we could use our martial art as a vehicle to assist that person. Yeah. I really believe that.
Absolutely.
I do.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I used to think being healthy, working out was the answer. And it's still part of the answer.
Yeah.
It's still part of the answer. And I still do it. But martial arts to me is really the center, that holds it.
It should be. And the one thing I'll add to that, read a lot.
Yeah.
Read and write a lot. The more you do that, the more your mind will open up and the more you start to see things in an alternate way and you're going to learn more. Musashi said, if you ever read the Book of Five Rings, right? He said, if you know the way, you see it in everything. And so by taking your martial arts as a core practice of your life, and like I said, if it becomes like a spiritual discipline, it's going to radiate out into other parts of your life. And so when you start to read other things, you'll make those connections.
Yeah.
And it really becomes part of who you are.
Right.
And your presence will become much more powerful. Right. Presence, posture, poise, right? Purpose, all of those things equal personal power.
Yeah. I think add to that is life experiences. And I don't just mean experiencing different things, but I guess I do mean experiencing, like finding things to experience, to expand your mind, your horizons, like traveling, culture, learning different cultures, learning different things. I think all that helps you be a better person.
Oh, it does. It does.
It's the non-reading version of
it strengthens your mind. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing about travel is that when you travel a lot, especially out of the States, you realize that this isn't the only show in town.
Right. Yeah.
And as patriotic as I am, and I am definitely a diehard American, I can tell you this: I enjoyed living overseas, and when I retire, I will live overseas again. But it doesn't mean I dislike this country. It just means that my experiences have been opened up by living and traveling abroad.
Yeah,
and I choose to put myself in those situations because I believe I grow from it.
Yeah, growth.
I do.
I guess that's really the word I'm looking for. Your personal growth through experiences.
Yeah. And martial arts is a perfect vehicle for that because you could do jujitsu and you could show up in any country in the world and show up at the dojo. And you know what? You're going to get welcomed.
You train.
Yeah. You are. And so it literally is a gateway into all those other experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, I've trained in many places all over the place. And that's true in boxing gyms. It's true in anything, any kind of martial art. Usually if you show up and you say, hey, I'm a martial artist from wherever, they go, oh, come on in.
It's a common, it brings people together.
It does.
It's a relation of what it is. You have something in common.
I think we need more of that. I really do. I think that a lot of gyms think locally when they should be thinking regionally, right? Like a good example is Louisiana in MMA. Everybody knows that Louisiana has produced some of the best MMA athletes. Congratulations, Ton. Okay. But I mean, Louisiana has produced some of the best MMA athletes ever. Okay.
Yeah.
But I believe that could have happened sooner if we would have thought regionally rather than just locally.
Yeah.
I really believe, because Louisiana, you have to compare it. Everybody talks about California this, California. Man, I ain't worried about California. We, like I said, what we have here between Lafayette and New Orleans is just profound of the quality of training, right?
Yeah.
But if we think more regionally, we're going to produce a lot more people like that.
Right.
For sure. And I think that's not only true in the combat sports, but I think that could be true for martial arts in general. Like we're talking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing. So Ronin, we have a few guys come over from Ronin, they'll train at the gym, and then we'll go over there. I've done open mats with them before and all that stuff, and it's just fun because again, they are another gym, and maybe we do have some of the same geographical regions that we might pull from.
Right.
But I mean, just that friendly culture of, hey, look, this is something that we know, this is something y'all know. Let's grow both gyms from that knowledge.
100%. Like I went over to West Bank Social Club the other day, even though that's part of the NOLA ecosystem that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I taught a seminar on angles, right? Footwork and angles. And I mean, I'm happy to share that. I told Larry at Ronin, I said, I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll be grateful to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with a system that's it's a little bit more organized to teach angles and footwork.
Oh.
And so it's based on an 8-directional flow. And when you understand it, it's not as complicated as it sounds when you see it in person. But they loved it over at West Bank. I mean, I'm going to start spreading that to different gyms.
Okay.
So
it's like footwork for striking and stuff?
But it applies to grappling too.
Okay.
Yeah, it also applies to weapons.
Okay,
so firearms, also knives, sticks, anything like that.
Yeah.
But what it teaches you to do is it basically itemizes your footwork to where you can practice in such a way while you're striking and moving at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about like firearms training, you can shoot then move, but it's better to shoot and move. Okay. Right. Well, the same thing is true in striking. If you are striking and moving and you're doing it from a position of balance and the right angles and positioning, you're going to be a step ahead all the time.
Absolutely.
Great example is Lomachenko, right? When you see the way he moves, Dominic Cruz did that too. I mean, when you see it, but if you are constantly moving, you're hard to hit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So by understanding that you're not just a big target and that you can shoot and move at the same time, it changes a lot of things. And I found it to be pretty successful. Also, me being older, I still spar a lot and I've applied it and it's kept me safe against younger, stronger people.
Yeah.
Right. You know, again, I'm not trying to set the world on fire and I'm not going to win any events anytime soon. But I think that over the course of my experience, I think it's pretty valid if you see it in action and you'll be like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So.
Right. Yeah. We can have to train together because that's a lot of what you're saying is a lot of the philosophies of what we do is, you know, that's the big thing, footwork.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
In fact, majority of most of the Filipino martial arts in the Philippines, you didn't grab a stick until you were, you know, a few years in of footwork.
Right.
You know, there was no weapon.
Well, I mean, you
just had
your
to
base.
dance.
You have to have your base.
You just had to move. You know,
the other thing about the Philippines, very much like Japan, you would be fighting in a lot of different terrain.
Yeah.
And so your footwork would have to be really solid to understand. I mean, if you look at Japan could be mountains. Japan could be coastal. I mean, there's a lot. And the same thing is true with the Philippines. I mean, you got jungles, you have beaches, so if your stability isn't there, I mean, I would think that has to be almost the first thing you have.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And with the blade, you know, 1 inch is life or death.
Right. Yeah. You can't rewind. And, you know, it's not like, you know, the Dog Brothers point. No.
Yeah.
Losing your balance at the wrong time.
Yeah. The Dog Brothers or anything where they're just trading hits is I guess, you know, it has its appeal to people who want to feel macho and, you know, that
I think
it's not really
started out at the same time as MMA and it started out with good intentions.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I think it started out that we can apply the pressure testing principle of weapons to what we're doing, like to the way they were doing this with unarmed fighting. And I don't necessarily think it translates the same way. Because I guess it has to do with the physics of the weapons and it has to do with just the fact that weapons hurt you really bad.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just not the same thing to take a rubber stick or a rubber knife because you're not going to perceive the same threat.
Yeah. That's the problem we had with the HEMA community for a while. Historical European martial arts.
Yeah.
As far as, I mean, I might even be using the actual metal weapon, but it's blunted. I know if I get hit with it, I'm not going to die.
Right.
Whereas if I'm in a real life scenario with that same weapon and it's a sharp weapon, now I might die. So I'm not going to take the same risk I'm going to take. I'm going to try and maybe play more on the outside and stay away from them.
It will change everything.
Yeah.
So it's almost impossible to take something that can kill you and try to put it in the same context as you doing grappling or boxing. I mean, how many times can you get hit in boxing? I mean, all day long. But the thing is, if you put a knife in, then the whole thing's different.
Yeah.
So you can't pressure test it in the same way. Even though I've seen these people making tons of money on seminars about trying to pressure test. I mean, I guess you can do it sort of, but I know that when I faced a real knife, like I was not thinking in terms of we're going to spar. I mean, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just the mindset changes.
what makes it worse is a lot of these guys, they'll full gear up. Okay. Yeah. So that gives them false confidence. That, oh, you know, I can take this chance, and they get hit. And then when that happens in real life, you need to take that chance and get hit and get your arm chopped off. You know, whatever happens, you know, it's kind of, it's scary to think, you know, and that's not the authentic way of they train in the Philippines. You know, so our organization, we don't use like headgear and stuff like that. We may put gloves on just in case something like that happens. But for the most part, there's no contact. When we spar, you strive to achieve the ability to know you got the strike, but you don't take it.
So, you know, I think a way to think about that is I'm a pull some experiences from I've seen in like penitentiaries. Okay. A lot of prisoners that will attack somebody in jail, they don't have a lot of formal training, but you know what they do have? They have intent.
Yeah.
And intent makes a giant difference when you're talking about weapons.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can somehow encapsulate the way to train intent to go back to that presence that we're talking about, that's more realistic than rubber knives. Okay.
Yeah.
When you understand that. Again, I've seen people killed, murdered, whatever, and with intent. Intent carries so much weight to it when it comes to weapons. I mean, whenever you watch, think of things like not kendo, but kenjutsu. When you look at the way they do things with swords, or Iaido, the way they do things with swords, everything is about intent.
Yeah.
Everything is slowly calculated, and it's all intent. It's about to explode, and bang, it explodes. It's intent. And it's all about that first strike, right? And if you understand it like that, I think that's extremely valuable. So going back to what, you know, how do you put that together in bladed or, you know, sticks or even guns? I think that's probably a better route that you can then combine with your combat sports training to make something that's a lot more practical.
Right. Yeah.
Fear does a lot.
It does.
You know,
it's a great motivator.
Yeah. Right. Somebody, you know, when you're about to step onto the wrestling mat or you're going to step in, you know, into a tournament, you know, you're leaving there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But if you're about to kick a door and serve a high risk warrant, there's a chance you're not coming home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, or somebody pulls that knife on you in a place where that's unexpected and you're not ready for it. And there it is. And now you have to deal with it. The chance that you might not go home is up there.
Yeah.
So again, fear changes everything.
Well, like that circles back to around when you say every cop should know some kind of martial arts.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're not playing for a sport when they do encounter, that's their life, you know.
So here's how I like to frame fear, and I tell people this: and not all fear is created equal, but at the same time, I find there's sort of a hack for fear, and this is what I think it is. Fear gives you the same physical symptoms as excitement, and if you can port those feelings and train yourself to interpret them as excitement, you'll act in a much more clear way.
Right.
Okay. So if the shit hits the fan and you start to realize I'm excited rather than I'm afraid, it changes. It shifts your mindset.
And not necessarily meaning I'm happy, excited.
No,
you know,
right. I'm aroused. Right. There's an arousal aspect to it. And when you understand that, in that it's how you interpret it, then it changes the outcome to how you're going to react.
Yeah. I mean, that's what your body does.
Right. Well, I mean, I work security. I run the detail at a haunted house. And earlier in the month, I had a kid. He didn't want to go in the haunted house. He said he was afraid. He was like 10 years old. And his parents were like, come on, we paid for this. You want to go? Come on, we want to go. I'm afraid. So I stood next to him and I told him, I said, man, I don't think you're afraid. He goes, I'm afraid. I said, I think you're excited. And he looks at me and I said, I'm seeing a boy that's excited. I said, you look like you can do this. I understand that you might be feeling something that feels like fear, but you know, because you're watching all these kids come out of here and you know that these are just people in masks. That's not real fear. I said, that's exciting. I want you to get with your mom and go through that haunted house. And he did. And he had fun. Right. So whether that worked or not, I don't know, but I can tell you, I've actually used that same frame with police rookies. I've used that same frame teaching women self-defense. I've used it in lots of places. I've used it in my own life.
Yeah.
When I went to motors training, a lot of people don't realize that police motor training, that's the hardest police school you'll ever go to. And it involves fear. It involves chaos. It involves falling. It involves like uncertainty. Like there's everything you can possibly imagine. And the course is designed like that, right? But the second you make that switch and realize I'm more excited than anything else and I'm not going to quit, you turn a corner, right? And then you start riding differently.
Yeah.
And again, I've been able to apply that across the board to a lot of things. And I think that's a direct martial arts related lesson.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think all these heightened emotions have a thin line of what they are, you know? That's why when you see people super excited, they cry. Yeah. You're like, why are you crying? No, but it's a happy cry. You know, it's
emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. That's what it is. If you understand your internal energy, you can shift it around. And and the way you do that, now this gets a little bit deeper into teaching, but the way that you can channel emotions is by understanding how to use your imagination.
Yeah.
All of these people that talk about internal martial arts, oh, I'm doing Qigong, I'm doing these internal things and moving energy around and all that. You know what that really is? That is a directed, disciplined use of their imagination.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's valid. Internal energy in martial arts, people will argue with me and say, oh, it's some kind of weird mystical chi energy. I think it is your imagination. And I think that by using your I think your imagination is stronger than anybody knows. And that's what we were talking about before, body and mind working together. I mean, you can prove that by understanding the placebo effect.
Yeah.
That's a real scientific concept. And when you understand that you can give somebody an inert pill, and a lot of times they even know it's an inert pill and it still makes them better.
It still makes them better.
That's the power of the mind over the body. Well, the thing about this internal energy stuff, if you look at it, in the different cultures that do internal work, you're going to see that all of it has to do with directed visualization, directed imagination, things that are practiced. It's not stuff that they just do on the fly. It's stuff that they actually do practice. But that's how you guide the energies in your body, the emotions in your body, is by detailed, disciplined use of your imagination.
Right.
So you can shift and frame things. That goes back to the meditation.
I was about to say,
it does.
That's all related to the meditation.
100%.
Yeah.
You know what else this was called in other cultures? Well, actually, more in the West than in the East. It was called magic, right? Yeah. If you look at what the concept of spiritual magic, like Wicca, Wicca, Golden Dawn style magic and things like that, that's all new compared to stuff in the East. In the West, those are like things that you do, whereas in the East, they're built into the way you live. Right. So the mindset changes everything. So your mind is the most important, most powerful thing along the way. And that affects everything you do, whether it's martial arts or how you relate to people. Right. And I know that's going off on a tangent, but I think it's really valid to understand it in the context of what it is that we're talking about. I could take that same lesson and apply it to police work. I could take it and apply it to self-defense. I could take it and apply it to personal empowerment. I mean, it's all about how you're thinking about it,
right,
and how you frame it, right? And so you can guide those emotions, right? So I hope that makes sense. And I know that was kind of a tangent. And
no, it makes sense.
Tangents are welcome on the show.
But a ramble, I mean, it might have sounded rambling, but I mean, it is what it has. It's definitely been my experience.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think part of the reason that the East, because it's the older civilization, it's older. So they've already done that, and it just keeps, moving.
Well, you go back to India. India is one of the oldest places organized martial arts ever existed. And a lot of people don't know that. They think it's China, and it's not. India was way before China.
Yeah.
And what comes out of India? Think about the disciplines that come out of India.
Yeah.
Yoga, meditation,
right?
Like Kundalini, like these different things that are all esoteric and stuff that work their way into Eastern martial arts. But they came that way via India. The Silk Road, basically, I guess you could say, would be a good way to put it. I may be historically inaccurate by saying that, but the sharing information in the East that came over to the West, and now we're just getting bits and pieces.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
We're still adolescent compared to what they were.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. But I think it's worthy of study. I really do. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that when I use that word magic, I'm not talking about like, oh, I can do some kind of wizard Gandalf stuff. No, that's not, I mean, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that by understanding and directing my imagination and my visualization, I can change the way I feel.
Yeah.
And that can change the way I see myself, and it can change the way I present myself to others, and therefore change the way others see me. Right. So if that's not power, I don't know what is. Right. And the martial arts are a vehicle for that. That goes back to we were talking about. You can't fake it. Right.
Right.
Because it creates that mindset.
What is this guy's name? I can't remember, but he's going back to breathing, all that, using your mind to control everything.
You're probably talking about Wim Hof.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
All he's doing is a Tibetan form of breathing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's called Tumo, is what it actually is called. And I know he's doing that most. I don't think he's doing it exactly, but in Tibet, it's said that the people who do that can dry freezing blankets that are wet.
Right.
Never seen it with my own eyes, so I can't say that for sure. But I can tell you that breathing can do some interesting things,
crazy stuff.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to test it on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in ice dips. I've definitely, so I can say that. I've been in some cold environments. I know that when I lived in Europe, I lived in man, we would get regularly -20, and so I've dealt with some cold weather. But I don't know that I would sit naked and try to dry a blanket.
Yeah.
Even though I meditate every day. I mean,
yeah.
Well, luckily Rennie doesn't mind being naked, so we'll be
right, exactly.
Man. So what would you rather, the heat or the cold? As far as
I like the cold.
Thank you.
I'm so much better in the cold. When it's hot, you can take off all your clothes and it's still hot.
Right.
When it's cold, you can dress to comfort.
The way I usually put it is, you're only allowed to take off so much clothes legally.
Right.
And then at that point, you can still only take off so much because you're wearing the rest.
Depends where you're at.
I mean, this past,
but you can always put on more clothes.
Yeah.
So you tell me this past summer when the heat index was like 118 degrees that you didn't wish for 40-degree weather.
Right.
I mean,
there were some people lying on social media though, saying, "Oh, I still wouldn't want to be cold."
Oh
like,
man,
bull crap.
Look, you say what you want. I know how I feel. I perform very well in a temperate, cool place.
My body, less information. I feel so much better in school.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in South Louisiana, so I mean, I can deal with the heat, but I would prefer not to deal with the heat.
I'm undecided. Like I'd rather winter or fall and winter,
right?
For the most part, but living in places where it's sub-zero, I don't think.
I don't know about sub-zero now.
I mean, just
that'd be a little
just like
too much.
So where it's if I gotta wake up and shovel my driveway and scrape the ice off my windshield, I don't want to.
So this whole summer, when we were around 115, I was looking because again, I want to retire in Eastern Tennessee. So the highest elevated population there is Mountain City. And while we were in the 115s, they were at like 78 degrees.
Yeah.
So
that's nice.
At the same time, I had to go referee up in Idaho for ISKA. And I went up to Pocatello, Idaho. And at night, it was like 68 degrees. And it was beautiful. There was no humidity. During the day, it was like 75.
That's
like,
beautiful.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm looking for my retirement. I'm heavily looking at Wyoming, Montana, that kind of area. I like Colorado. Colorado's got a certain kind of dry cold that it could be like 30 degrees and you have a t-shirt on, and it's not that humid cold. I mean, down here it gets colder than people think it does, especially with the humidity. Right?
That's what does it. That's what I don't like about it.
Well, that affects us when it's hot and when it's cold.
It gets bone-chillingly cold. But if you go to places like Colorado or Montana, now I do know Montana gets really cold in the winter, but in the temperate times, like in the fall and stuff, it feels really nice. Right. It does. And the same temperature doesn't quite equate in the same way. Yeah.
Isn't Montana one of the coldest places.
I wouldn't say.
I think I had a friend that lived out there.
I think Dakotas and like Minnesota are colder than Montana. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. I do know this. I've been to Minnesota in the winter, and that is no joke.
No joke.
Okay. Also in parts of Eastern Europe, I've been that have just been really cold, crazy cold. But again, I would rather the cold than the extreme heat. I just do. That's me.
I don't know. Extreme heat. I just picked right in the middle. That's where I want to be.
I could be out there in the snow, but in a hot tub. That way, I have both.
Yeah.
I could be with that. Absolutely,
that would be ideal.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. My kids lived in Tennessee for a long time, and that's it would be a nice place to live.
Yeah, we're gonna open up a gym over there. I've already looked. There's no gym in Mountain City, Tennessee.
Mountain City. Where's Mountain City?
It's northeastern Tennessee, like almost real close to Virginia.
Okay, yeah,
up in the
that sounds like wide open territory. That you might do very well doing that. Absolutely. My son grew up in Costa Rica.
Okay.
So from the time he was like 3 until the time he was 15, he lived in Costa Rica. Right. So I've been to Costa Rica a lot too.
Yeah.
Now Costa Rica's hot, but it's also temperate.
Yeah.
And it's nice.
Well, they're always going to have a sea breeze coming off.
Yeah. There's winds and everything, and up in the mountains it gets a little chillier.
Yeah.
I mean, it does get hot, but at the same time, I found it to be it can be comfortable.
Yeah.
It does get hot, but it's just nice.
Well, my friend was saying that about he's Colombian. And when he goes home to Colombia, it's like, well, man, shit, that's right on the equator. That must be hot as hell. But he's like, no, man, up in the mountains, it's nice and cool or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I've been to a lot of places, and I mean, I've been in different comfort levels. I mean, for sure. I mean, if you're going to go with climate, Southern California is really where it's at. I mean, that's so nice. Although I wouldn't want to live in California.
Yeah.
There was a time in my younger years I did want to live in California, and I am so glad that I didn't move to California.
Well, I spent 5 years there when I was in the Marine Corps. It was, again, really nice climate, but one population. So anytime you go somewhere, you're going to be waiting in line somewhere. And the other is I like living in a place where if I tell you hello, you're going to respond back hello.
Sure.
Versus,
See, Montana is a lot better for that. I went to Bozeman, Montana a while back.
Yeah.
You talk about nice. Oh, it's beautiful. And there's no traffic. Okay. And it's a big small town. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a big small town. And to me, that was excellent. So, I mean, other cities I've been to that have also been pretty cool. A city that I would have never thought would have been a really nice place, which I recently visited, Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City had no traffic. It was super organized. Everybody was super nice. I'm not saying it doesn't have its bad. I think everywhere will have its bad parts. But I mean, I'm driving around. I'm like, there's a lot to do. There's plenty of restaurants. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to do for the kids. I mean, like in Oklahoma City, they had a bunch of things like skate parks and stuff like that. And I mean, what's wrong with this? With here? I mean, when you see New Orleans as opposed to places like that, man, we really need more stuff like that for the kids. The kids here, they don't have any choice but to get into trouble.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what it is that's stopping that. I'm not going to try to sound like an economic expert because I'm not. But I mean, they need to bring stuff like that here to bring this state a little bit higher.
I think that they mainly focusing on the tourism. That's why, and it's adult tourism here.
Right.
So it's
well, I mean, you say that, and I mean, but again, that's a weird road. And I'm going to tell you why it's a weird road. Have you ever been to Amsterdam?
No. Never
Okay.
been there.
I've spent a lot of time in Amsterdam. New Orleans, in my opinion, should be America's Amsterdam. Okay. I think people really think Vegas is America's Amsterdam, but it's not. Vegas and Amsterdam have virtually nothing in common. Okay.
It doesn't seem like there's culture in Vegas.
New
I've been to
Orleans
Vegas before.
has more in common with Amsterdam than anything else. New Orleans is built to be like Amsterdam. I mean, if you think, what was New Orleans? It was a pirate port. New Orleans, forever, people came here to misbehave, right? But where you are right now is people come here to do that, but they're not given a way to do that safely.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So now you're on this weird road. Do you want it to be downtown Disney, or do you want it to be something for adults to come in?
Yeah.
Because what happens is when you prohibit things, they're not dangerous, they become dangerous because they're illegal.
Yeah.
They're not illegal because they're dangerous. They're dangerous because they're illegal. And now I am not going to sit here and advocate. That's a whole different thing. But I'm just saying, like, if you really want to draw adult tourism for a misbehaving kind of place, they have to do something similar. And again, I am no way an expert on this, but again, I just see it as a policeman, like, you got people coming in to misbehave, and you're letting them come into an unsafe
restricting. Yeah, right.
You're allowing people to come into an unsafe environment to do things that they're going to do anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So if they're coming here, I mean, why can't we find a way to make those things safer? I mean, maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but at the same time, I've seen it work in another place, and it doesn't mean that if you go to Amsterdam, I'm not telling you it's perfect. It's not. There's a lot of problems, 100%. But at the same time, it's a whole lot safer to go misbehave in a place like that than it would be if you're coming in, like, to go to a convention in New Orleans. Yeah. I mean, if you go in the quarter right now in New Orleans, there's a high chance you're going to be the victim of a crime. I mean, whether you're there to misbehave or not, I mean, whatever. But I'm just saying that maybe they need to rethink that, and again, this is not about any kind of politics. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Well, I think so. I can't say this on the culture of Amsterdam, but I think it's in certain places, everywhere it has its own culture. Okay. So when we try to compare it to the another, you can't, it's not apples to apples because the culture of the people are different.
Yeah. I love Amsterdam. So if I had the money, I would move to Amsterdam. If I were going to have an adequate pension, that's where I would choose to retire. Yeah. And first of all, the kickboxing in Amsterdam is second to none. Yeah. I mean, think about all the Dutch kickboxers. I've been, when I used to train Pat Barry, I had Pat Barry up in Amsterdam training with Ernesto Hoost in Amsterdam. So I've spent a lot of time among that kind of environment. And I can tell you that martial arts is taken extremely seriously in Amsterdam. They love Muay Thai. They love kickboxing. They've developed their own style of kickboxing out of Amsterdam. Yeah. And now the other martial arts are growing and flourishing there. It's a great place to be. It really is. I mean, intellectually, it's a great place to be. I mean, most people speak multiple languages, and you can go sit down at any bar or restaurant and get into some of the most detailed discussions about the world that you can ever imagine. Right. It's just a pleasant place to be. That's always how I found it. Again, I know it's not perfect, but I wish we could have a little bit more like that here. So,
I mean, here, I love New Orleans.
I do too. I love it. I absolutely do.
I tried to move out. I tried to live in Tampa. I tried, but something, even with all its flaws, I still drawn here. Even when I say, I don't, I hate New Orleans. I don't like to go downtown. I still love it. I still go downtown.
I'm with you 1,000%. And that seems like it's a self-defeating thing to say, but it's not. I prefer to understand New Orleans as the north of the Caribbean rather than the south of the United States.
Okay.
If you put it in that perspective, it makes more sense.
Right.
It really does. And that's not a bad thing. I'm giving it a compliment by saying that. Yeah. Right. But if we would embrace that and understand it more, and I mean, but what you have going on right now in the city is just a mess. It really is a mess.
Right.
And I miss the days of hanging out on Magazine Street. I miss the days of hanging out in the Bywater. I mean, my wife too, she, loves to go to the restaurants in the city, but we go less now.
Yeah, us too. Yeah,
we go, and it's not because people say, "Oh, well, you're afraid." No, it's not about that. It's just dysfunctional.
Yeah, I just don't want to deal with that bullshit.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with it. It is dysfunctional. And I mean, and again, like you, I deeply love New Orleans. I really do, but I just wish they would. It would.
You wish it better for it.
I wish better for it. I do.
It's that troubled child,
and I think that. And I hate to say it, sometimes tough love is the right love. Yeah, you get what you vote for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want that to be the case, but it is the case.
Right? Exactly.
I tell people all the time, elections have consequences. Whether you vote on the right or you vote on the left,
totally,
there's going to be some kind of consequences.
Totally. Yeah. I would consider myself very liberal for a policeman, based on all the places that I've traveled.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that being liberal for a policeman, New Orleans is still messed up.
Yeah.
Like you can't put it like this. You can be as liberal as you want to be, but without security, you can't be anything.
Can't be anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you can't, liberalism can't thrive in a place that's not secure. All right. And that's true all these other places too, like Portland and like Oakland and San Francisco and Los Angeles. And my God, I mean, as much as I want to be socially open but you can't, I just can't buy into the no security part.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where I think those cities are seeing that right now, and New Orleans is front and center of it.
I think even the people that say that don't believe it or not really thinking about it.
Well, they've never been the victim of a crime.
Right.
That's another big, that's another part of it.
Yeah.
And when they are the victim of a crime, things change.
Yeah. Well, we've already seen that with people who've advocated for this or that, and then now they're like, oh shit.
Right.
Yeah. And all the defund the police crowd, all of a sudden it's like, wait up, where's the police at? Why are the police coming to my house? Why I called them an hour, 3, 4, 5 hours ago. Where are they at?
Right.
Well, you defunded them.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The thing about the defund the police thing, I think that, like a lot of things, that started as one thing and became something completely different.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, there's quite a few things that I can tell you as a police supervisor that the police shouldn't be doing.
Answering mental calls all the time.
There's a lot of things that are social issues that should be being dealt with by other institutions.
Yeah.
That the police are the by default people that have to handle it.
You got to wear many hats.
Yeah, and it's not a surprise that people will sometimes react poorly to policemen handling things like that. But the problem is there's nobody else to do it. Right. And so you put people and again, going back to, it's the best time to be the police. That's why you're having to get all this new training. And that's not a bad thing, but at the same time, there's a huge growing pain along the way. Now, when it comes to what defund the police has come to mean now, I fully emphatically reject what it is now.
Well, I think a lot like a lot of ideas, smart people think of them, or reasonable people think of them, and then the stupid people take it over.
Right.
You know,
I mean, like mental health. If they would invest more into the mental health infrastructure, you would have a lot less of these problems. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that for the health of society in general.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say this. I'm obviously not going to use any names or anything, but a while back we went on a call where a young man wanted to end his life. Okay. This was a normal looking kid. All right. And the reason he wanted to end his life was because his AI chatbot girlfriend was mistreating him. I thought I saw it all.
Yeah.
Okay. But obviously I didn't. So he wanted to kill himself over an app.
That is completely mental.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying that is not a police problem.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, now, if something happened,
I don't want anything to happen to this boy. And we took the steps that we needed to take to get him help. But at the same time, that's so far beyond
what you're trained for.
Problem. I mean, like, how do you even answer that?
Yeah.
And I mean, that was terrible. But that goes to show you that if we're that far gone and we have no mental health infrastructure, that we're getting this more and more and more, this kind of thing, where are we going to be in 10 years?
Well, that's the problem. They have nobody else to call. So who are they going to call?
Right.
911.
Right.
Well, who's 911 going to dispatch? A police officer.
Yeah. And again, I mean, we were there with EMS, and EMS was next to us, and we're like, man, this is crazy.
I mean, you're there. I mean, it's good that you're there in case something you needed that help.
Sure.
But that's not the actual help he needed. You know what I mean?
Well, right. But I mean, he needed help from way before.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Before you get to something like that.
Exactly.
And that's just not there. That help is not there.
Yeah.
And if you want to put it in a more relatable aspect, it's not there for first responders either.
No.
Right. Yeah. How many military people do you know that are suffering from PTSD? How many people like first responders that covertly have PTSD and can't get help for it because they believe it's going to end their career?
Right. Yeah. They don't want to say anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to a peer support certification a while back, and I'm absolutely glad that I did because it opened up my eyes to a lot of that. And I believe that I could use martial arts as a vehicle into that to affect that. I remember I told you before, hurting people's really easy, helping people heals not. That goes right back here when it comes to that. Like that, we do not pay enough attention to the infrastructure to maintain solid mental health. And that's a big, big problem right now. Yeah. Across the board, not just with the police, not just with the military, with society in general. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother subject of where we can go of how do we get to the mental health, helping them.
I believe that putting kids in martial arts is a big step. I believe that. I mean, I know that I sound maybe my view is biased because I'm a martial artist, but I think that putting kids in martial arts at an early age and letting them do difficult things is a huge factor in creating resiliency.
Yep. And that's what I was getting at is the segue into the program you were talking about.
Yeah, MAC.
Right?
Right. MAC. So Joe Ancona put together what's called MAC, M-A-K, Martial Arts for Kids. He was working on it for a while. And it's a nonprofit that I've been asked to be a part of. Myself and Angel. Angel Spitali, she's one of my students. If you follow me on social media, you probably know who she is. Anyway, this program is designed for getting kids that can't afford martial arts and putting them into a gym. So the program is going to sponsor these kids in order to train. So that's just getting on the ground and up and running. We're doing the Battle of the Badges coming up. So another shout out right there. That's going to be like first responders, police, and fire. I'll be refereeing that.
What's the date on that one?
That is November 10th. That's going to be Friday. And it's to raise money for first responder charities.
Okay.
I know we're raising money for Dante Vega, who got into a motorcycle accident. He's a sheriff's deputy. But at the same time, we're also, that's not the only cause. But MAC is going to be a part of that as well in the future. We think MAC is going to grow quite a bit to where we can actually intake kids and then get them into different gyms. And we're not doing it as anything like, we're not trying to push business to one gym or another. We're trying to match the kid with the gym that they want to be at.
Or where they're relative.
Or where they're close to. You know, what's accessible to them. Because I can, as I've said before, I mean, I think that martial arts are one of the most important things that a person can do, and even more so when it comes to a kid. I started when I was 10 years old, and it has impacted my life more than anything else. And I would want to see other kids have that same opportunity. So I'm happy to be a big part of it. I'm sure I'll be teaching for it. I'm sure I'll be part of the admin to put kids in different gyms. Angel will be doing the same. And I just want to see it grow and thrive for sure.
And how far is it along now?
It's a thing now. So the nonprofit is operational.
You've placed some kids?
No, we haven't done that yet. Okay. After the Battle of the Badges, I think it's going to really ramp up.
Okay.
We've been concentrating a lot on Battle of the Badges right now. But as far as all the infrastructure for the organization, that's all been done.
How are you taking? How are you raising the money?
That's going to be private donations for like events and things like Battle of the Badges, things along those lines. It's going to be a multi-tiered system to raise money for.
Right. So you guys have a website or anything?
He's setting up a website now. For MAC. That should be operational very soon.
I think once that goes operational, we should get Joey and
absolutely
Myron back.
We'll get.
I'll come for sure. Me, Joey, and Angel actually to speak about it because there's so much to it.
I mean, that would be.
That's a show in and of itself.
Exactly.
No doubt.
That'd be ideal, for any kids, like you said, I think that
right. And I mean, I would like to curate it to where I'd like to speak to the parents and really explain to them the benefits of this to where they're all aboard. And once those kids get into it again, I shudder to think about how many kids that are out there right now in places that they're less fortunate, they can't afford it. And what kind of athletes could we not be seeing?
That we're missing out on.
Think about it. I mean, a lot of these kids could, one of these kids could change the entire landscape of everything. And they're just not getting that opportunity.
And the compounding effect of it too. Like maybe they are less fortunate as far as like mom and dad doesn't make enough money to sign them up. But now other kids are getting to do things. They're seeing the other kids do it. Maybe they start developing depression because of that.
100%.
It just keeps on growing and growing and growing.
I mean, that circles back to the mental health.
It does. So, I mean, when I was a kid, we had a lot to do. We made stuff to do. The landscape has shifted so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I mean, man, it's unbelievable when I see kids now about how they're just not in touch with their bodies and how they're not in touch with the outdoors and how they're not in touch with anything other than a small screen. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm against technology. I'm very much an advocate of technology. I think that technology is going to change everything. But there's a big but. It's such a double-edged sword. We have to leverage it right.
Yeah. Right.
And when you leverage it correctly, it's the best tool for growth there is.
Yep.
And but at the same time, if you fall off the other end of it, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. I mean, when you think about it, like, you know, medicine in the wrong dose is poison.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's true with technology as well. So you have to understand what its limitations are. You have to understand where you can leverage it. And that's true of teaching martial arts, like learning how to run an infrastructure of a gym. Technology is making that a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right. So when you use it as a tool, it's great. But when it gets off, you know, when it gets off the reservation, it's we'll go back to the kid that wants to hurt himself because of the app. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, then that's now the medicine has become poison.
Right.
Right.
It's scary to think that what path it took that he was living that led him to that point.
Seemed like a normal kid to me.
You know,
he didn't seem like he was in touch with his body. He didn't seem like he was very active. He seemed socially awkward.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he didn't look like a bad kid. The family didn't appear to be bad people at all.
Yeah.
It just happened that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible. So, but I mean, I'm very hopeful that he got the help that he needed. And I mean, and I'm happy to ever help somebody like that. I mean, even though that's really outside of my wheelhouse, I mean, I wouldn't know where to begin with something like that.
Right. No, absolutely.
Because that's pretty far gone.
That even people who are trained for that wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah. I don't know.
They need some good history there to see what's going on.
I'm not a mental health professional, so I mean, I can't say, but I mean that. Yeah, I would think you would need that started a while.
You need to dig deep,
right? Right. But I mean, this stuff. I don't know if you're paying attention to a lot of the technology out now, like some of the AI stuff, and how. I mean, this is going to radically shift everything we know in the next 10 years.
Absolutely,
maybe sooner.
It's already making drastic changes in a lot of things.
I know. I'll say this: there's no excuse to be stupid anymore.
No.
The information is right there. Right. You just have to go out and grab it. It's low hanging fruit. Information, like true information, used to be hard to come by.
Yeah.
Think about when we'd have to go to libraries, and think about when we'd have to go and do stuff like that to research. Yeah. Now it's very low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Same thing is true with martial arts.
You can learn everything you need to do sitting on the toilet, right? From the palm of your hand.
I can remember when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, starting in martial arts, I was seeking out books that were hard to find, and there were few and far between. And when you got one, you'd read it cover to cover multiple times. Now information is so cheap. I mean, just now, again, you can have a wrong side of that too, because YouTube is full of people who are full of crap.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, it's also full of people who are very legitimate.
Well, and that's the problem too, is because it's so abundant now, everything's so abundant.
Right.
You get lost in what you should be looking at.
Right.
You know, or what's legitimate.
That's
just like TV, like Netflix. You look at Netflix, people nowadays, I don't know what to watch. Right. Because there's a billion things to choose from. So you can't pick it out.
Of choice. It's called the paradox of choice. And the thing is, like, is more choice necessarily better? And I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of like creativity. All right.
Yeah.
Common wisdom might tell you that it's easier to be creative with more resources. I don't agree with that. No. I think it's better. I think it's easier to be creative with less resources.
Yeah. Well, that forces you creativity.
So think about boxing. Like, let's put this in a boxing capacity. I believe that you can solve any striking problem with boxing. I really do. I think well-placed boxing is simple, direct. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it means that it's simple and direct, and you have fewer tools that you get better at. And so you can be more creative by using less.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you learn a kick or two, once you do that, you become a better kickboxer because you already know how to box.
Yeah.
But I believe you can be more creative with less choices. That's just what I think.
From my left hand or my right?
Right. There you go. But I mean, think about people who start companies from nothing. Right?
Yeah.
That almost universally, they tell you that the way they started their company and the reason they are what they are is because they started from nothing.
Right.
If they would have had a plethora of resources, they might not have been able to do.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So it's a lot to ponder, man. It really is.
Yeah.
It is.
And going back to the AI, what's scary is the visual things they could do now.
Yes.
So this could be
Photoshop's
Billy.
a lot better.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
Maybe we could be fake right now.
Right.
Somebody could fake us a whole podcast,
And they can say something totally with my image and my voice.
Easily.
And now all of a sudden that's going to me.
Well, have you seen
scams? They're having scams now where like a relative, it sounds like a relative is calling you asking for
phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yes.
That's why I tell my relatives I'm broke.
So have y'all seen the Instagram AI Instagram model? So it's whoever made it. It's AI and Instagram.
She didn't break up with you, did she? Right?
No. But so she's because she's so popular. It's not even real. They're generating, millions of dollars.
Okay, yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it's not even a real person.
Right.
So somebody,
it's some dude in a basement that's running it. Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
But wait, I'm saying, give that another 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's going to be scary.
In a way, I understand why the people in Hollywood were afraid of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you're going to get to a point where you don't need anybody to make a compelling movie. Right.
Yeah.
And because you can have in fact, if y'all ever get Angel on the show, Angel will have some opinions about that because she's in Hollywood. She'll explain. But again, think about it, where you could literally do a production from zero with nothing. And now you got no. So what happens to that industry? Now, I've always tried to look at the brighter side of things. People say be afraid of AI. I say be afraid of people who know how to use AI.
Yeah.
Okay.
What they're using it for.
Right. Well, but AI is not going to take your job. The person who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. So we're now at a point in society where this is something that you better learn how to use.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't, you're going to be left behind really quick.
Yeah.
It's not only AI, it's just technology.
Well, it's just, technology in general.
It's the interface of technology.
Well, it's just like computers. When computers were home computers start, people rejected it.
Right.
But if you didn't get with it, then you're left behind.
Yeah. Most of the jobs went to it.
Yeah.
Right. Think about it now. What job can you do without
a computer?
Yeah,
not much.
A few things, but you might be able to be a landscaper, but even then you got to keep track of all your accounts.
It's still involved in some way.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be involved at some level. Even the most physical job will be involved. All the personal training clients that I do, as far as with private lessons, if I didn't have a computer, that would be hard to do.
Yeah. Well, farmers nowadays even map out their fields using drones and computer programs and stuff.
So drone technology is unbelievable now. And you're going to only see that get more and more advanced. And where it's really going to get interesting is the convergence of those technologies.
Yeah.
Like when you start thinking of, you have genetics, you have robotics, you have artificial intelligence, you have nanotechnology, where those things are exciting enough on their own. Wait till they start combining. Wait till you start combining genetics with artificial intelligence, just combining robotics with artificial intelligence.
I think they made a movie about this.
There's quite a few movies about this. Right. Yeah. Skynet is aware.
Yeah.
Right.
The grappling dummies are going to get a lot better.
Yeah. Right.
I think you set it on easy mode, white belt level, blue belt level.
Yeah. Then they're going to be like those sex dolls. Right?
Yeah.
They're going to own the dojo.
Except for you're going to be the one.
Right. Set it on black belt mode. Boom.
Yeah.
It becomes a wreck.
Congratulations, Professor Roboto here is going to teach us some moves today.
Right.
It could eventually get to that.
Yeah.
It's
I don't put anything out of the realm of possibility anymore. I really, the older I get, the more I look at the world and I'm thinking, man, I would have never predicted this.
Yeah. Whatever they dreamed up in movies, it's slowly coming to happen.
That's kind of like the Star Trek effect. Everything that happened in Star Trek is slowly starting to come up.
Sure.
Captain Kirk.
That's already here.
Got phones.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Beam me up.
That's what I'm waiting for.
That's gonna be that one.
That when I don't have to wait in traffic no more. That's the one I'm waiting for.
Time to go to work.
Did you ever wonder why, if they had beaming technologies, why did they need spaceships at all?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's what I love about some movies. When you can pick those holes,
right.
We don't need that then.
No.
Well, there are some movies that are older movies that if you put them in today's context, they would actually make sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a perfect example of that. You remember the movie Weird Science?
Yeah.
Okay. Weird Science required you to make a lot of leaps for that to happen, for them to be able to create this girl.
Yeah.
Well, now they could create an AI.
Yeah.
Like she could literally be an AI that's with them 24/7. And like it would be plausible, it would be understandable. And at the same time, you could have kind of the same setup in the fact that she was controlling infrastructure and stuff like that. Now that makes sense. Right? That's
plausible. 3D printing now.
That's why that kid had an AI girlfriend.
maybe that kid was on to something, man. I mean,
what the problem was, it was still just in the computer. He needed it to be physically into it.
Well, we also need the programmer not to break up with him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Mistreat him.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where it went south because I didn't go through the whole thing. But man, I mean, we just referred him as quickly as we could to the right help. But I mean, again, that's once again, think about what I said. Medicine in the wrong dose is poison.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Yeah. Do you think some of this is already happening, like fooling people now, like AI?
Oh yeah,
things?
yeah.
Like on TV and stuff like that.
If you look at most of our news stories that you read online, most of them are written by AIs now.
Oh yeah. Well, it's all generating and sharing the thing.
Have you used ChatGPT yet? I mean, like, think about that. That is really miraculous. I know it's not 100% accurate and everything, but at the same time, if you need an inspiration for like an idea or you need it to correct something that you've done, there's never been anything like that before.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Never. So you know the lights that are in the garage, the LED lights. So that has, it's a program, and if you know how to code, you can make it do whatever you want. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, make me a code. Just verbally type it. I want a code. I want my lights to do this, 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 and this. Does it? Like it wrote the code, and now I just have to put it in the computer to control the thing.
That's incredible.
It's ridiculous.
It's totally incredible. But I mean, I just try as I get older. I want to seamlessly integrate this stuff into my life, but I do not want to lose touch with the outdoors. I don't want to lose touch with who I am as a person, because I really believe that the further this stuff goes, we lose our identity as people.
You want it to still use it as a tool, but not be.
Right. I want it to be just that. I want it to be a tool. Right. Because you use a tool. Right. I don't want to be used by the tool. Right. And that's, I think, is it's a good way to look at it.
You don't want it to be the crutch.
Now, I'm also going to say I kind of agree with. I've paid attention to the arguments about it, and I think that the cat is now out of the bag as far as any chances to regulate it or whatever. I think that's done. I think I think if you regulate it, that's like suicide now, because if you don't do it, someone else is.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing that we can hope for in technology is that it becomes part of us, not separate from us, because then we can guide it. So if it merges with us rather than is something separate from us, I think then at the very least it is now us. But we can still keep our humanity if we keep it that way. Where we're going to lose the humanity is like it is right now, where it's totally separate from us.
Right.
Think about it like that. And that's a little deeper philosophically, but there you go. Yeah. I mean, that comes from an old martial artist. So,
have you ever played anything on the what's it called? When you get the goggles and you go on
VR, the VR. Yeah, I got a VR
headset. Not just the VR, but what is the community when you go? The Facebook has
the metaverse.
Yeah, the metaverse.
Well, I mean, I've played. My experience in VR is Beat Saber.
Yeah,
okay.
Beat Saber, yeah.
I like Beat Saber, and that's called the Thrill of the Fight, the boxing game.
Okay,
which is surprisingly good for what it is.
So check out Supernatural. It's an exercise app.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
It is good. So you got boxing. You can choose from boxing. You can choose from something like Beat Saber, but you have bats and you're hitting targets. So it's a lot has to do with. So I'll do it, and it reminds me a lot of doing FMA, because if you concentrate on the bats as a knife or as a thing, then it translates really well.
I need to look that up. Yeah, because I have a quest.
So it has but it has boxing. It has I think not kicks, but you can do working knees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. I work up a sweat, just staying in my house.
Yeah, like I said, the thrill of the fight. Sometimes I'll bring it to the gym and I'll use that to warm up.
Yeah.
And I like Beat Saber again, but I'm gonna check out Supernatural. Yeah, I've never seen that one.
Yeah, I think there's a monthly subscription, but I think you can try it out. Just to see
I'd be curious to do that.
It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's very pretty cool. But I was actually the metaverse because I've been on it, and I didn't explore it too much. But it's crazy. It's just people there, that are living their life in there.
Yeah.
You could buy property. You buy an apartment,
right?
You could sell it later. I mean, it's
I think where you're going to see, I think where it's going to get a lot more mainstream is with what you call AR rather than VR. The augmented reality is going to be a lot more mainstream because you're going to, this thing that Apple's working on right now, it's a first iteration, but I'm going to tell you, it's going to change a lot.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, like, I'm going to give you a prediction for the next 20 years. You're going to get basically a set of glasses that's going to be reduced in size and weight to what regular glasses might be. And you're going to have a degree of immersion that you're going to be able to change. You'll be, if you're going to be on a plane flight, you pop your headphones in, you might have those glasses, you'll be able to totally immerse.
Yeah.
And then there'll be different levels. You'll be able to, like, it'll be a gradient of immersion or not. So, like, if you're driving, you might have a completely clear field of view, but the directions might pop up at the same time. Yeah, and I think that's where you're going. And then let's go to law enforcement.
Well, that's
police work.
That
facial recognition in combination with that kind of technology that's going to basically hack into NCIC.
You'll be able to tell you warrants popping up on you.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I get on a traffic stop and your boy gets out the car and I look at him and it immediately
automatically knows.
Face, it says use caution.
Ding, ding, ding.
This.
Fought the police.
Now, whether or not it's right or wrong, I don't know what the accuracy of that will be because, again, I'm not that kind of engineer or whatever, but I can tell you that I see that coming.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
See that coming. I mean, it already works with the license plates.
Yeah.
I mean, the ALPR readers are phenomenal at what they do.
The very first time I was in a car with that, I mean, all of a sudden I'm just parked. We're sitting in a parking lot, making sure nobody breaks in the cars during the Saints game. All of a sudden, the car passes by, it pops up, stolen vehicle.
Oh, man.
Holy crap.
Yeah. It doesn't now.
That's crazy.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the augmented reality is, I know Oculus is one of the newer versions is going to be that, right?
Well, the new one that it just came out with was the Oculus Quest 3, and it is a lot smaller than the old headsets used to come out this time.
Is the 3 out yet?
I just saw an advertisement about it. So
coming soon. I know. I've seen the ads for it, and it was like you were saying,
it's not going to be anything like the Apple thing. I think that it's going to be way
ahead.
I think the Apple thing's going to be way, but even though the Apple thing.
Oh no, yeah, right. I remember watching the Apple ad. That looks really cool.
But that's what I'm talking about. I think that's going to get a lot smaller, and I think that's going to get. That's where it's going to become really hit that mainstream tipping point.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and it's probably they'll probably release it slowly, so you keep buying it.
Right. Well, I don't know about you, but it's like $3,500. I'm not spending $3,500 on that. I got way too many motorcycle parts to buy.
Right.
I got to take care of 3 dogs. I'm definitely
gonna wait for the wraparound like regular goggles that says, "Hey, your opponent's going for a Kimura. Go ahead and defend by dropping your elbow."
As much as I like technology, I'm like 3 or 4 phones behind right now, and I'm actually waiting for the new one to come in.
Well, guys, I mean, we're already at 2 hours. I know you gotta.
I gotta go referee.
Right?
I gotta go referee Cage Warrior tonight. Yeah. So everybody listening, come on down.
Yeah. There's a few of Larry's guys there, right?
Larry said that.
Yeah, I gotta go give the pre-fight meeting. I need to put that on video. That's what I really need to do. I just need to do a video of it and hit play when.
oh yes, so they can listen. Yeah.
Do the pre-fight.
Right, I gotta watch this.
Do it to the commission, right? Because I got to give it every show, and I always get the same questions.
So it's the same exact thing. As long as they got the questions,
and I always get the same questions.
Right.
Like, how long have you been doing this? Can I do heel hooks?
Frequently asked questions.
Yes. Right.
Frequently asked questions. Can I do heel hooks? Can I do supported knees? Yes.
Yes.
Right.
So the different organizations you ref for, do their rules drastically change, or it's pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same. Yeah. I mean, I'm mainly licensed in Louisiana, but I am ISKA certified as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there like different states have minor differences, like in equipment. Like some states don't allow, that you have to have shin guards and headgear and stuff for amateurs. Which, in my opinion, I think it should be gradients. Like, if a person is fighting for the first time, I don't see why shin guards and headgear is a bad idea. Just like the other thing too, it's like why don't you have shorter rounds for somebody like that? Let them get their feet wet. Let them get 10 safe fights in front of a bunch of people, to where then when they hit that 10th fight, it might be a different number for everybody. You could probably grade them A, B, and C. Like C being complete novice. Let them have a few fights like that, then they graduate to B and then graduate to A. I mean, what's the hurry? I mean, think about it like this. In Thailand, how many fights do these kids have as amateurs in Thailand?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
You see their records, and it's like, well, how many was he fighting?
But Mexico,
twice a night.
Think about Mexican boxers. Like, look at their records as amateurs. They got so many fights. But I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice when somebody turns pro when he's got 5 fights.
Yeah.
I think you should be able to have a bunch of fights that are safe along the way. I mean, now again, I know that's not a science, that's an applied thing, but at the end of the day, I don't see where it's a bad idea necessarily when you first start to wear gear. And I think as the referee, I'll stop a fight like that sooner. I know some people yell. And being a referee, I mean, you're always going to have somebody mad at you, no matter what.
I mean, you got to balance the health and safety of the fighter.
I've been refereeing since the 90s. I have refereed. In fact, me and Ricky, the commissioner, were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. I think I've refereed in the neighborhood of 3,000 fights. Okay. And I mean, when I stop a fight, it's based on a whole lot of information.
Right.
And I'm still going to tell you, I might not be right every single time, but I would rather be on the side of caution.
Yeah.
I'd rather stop the fight a little too early than a little too late.
That way that person can fight again in
100%.
Yeah.
And I've actually had fighters thank me after watching the video, after they were screaming and complaining, watch the video, go, oh, okay, I saw what you saw. So that's why I stopped your fight. So when I see you go to a place where you're no longer defensive, but you're now submissive, I'm probably stopping.
Right.
And doing nothing is not a defense.
Right.
I say that every fight meeting. Right. Doing nothing is not a defense.
Well, and you see that in general public of people watching fights, and they're like, oh, he stopped the fight too early. The guy was cowered down, gave him his back.
He's in turtle and folded up and took 10 punches to the head. He's done. Right.
I mean, there's no need to wait for the kid to get a concussion.
Nope. I want to see everybody walk out of there in the same shape that they walked in.
Or maybe a little bit less shape.
Well, right. I'm saying, like, I don't want to. Look, the last thing that you want if you're an amateur fighter is to have to go to the ER.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing whenever you got tournaments and all for jiu-jitsu and all that stuff. The referees are always going to stop it when the kid's arms get extended. Why do we have to let somebody pop a kid's arm that doesn't know exactly when it's happy?
Totally. Right. And there's nowhere that's more true than with heel hooks.
Yeah. And I got to explain it to the parents all the time. It's like they had the kid's arm, your kid's arm was extended. The referee stopped it to protect your kid's arm.
I would have stopped it too. I mean,
exactly.
And I would hope somebody would stop it for me because I don't want my arm broken.
I've been on the coach's side before where our kids got arm barred and the arm got extended. And I'm telling the ref, hey, thank you for stopping.
Absolutely, no doubt.
That would be the worst thing. A poor kid messes it.
But because again, kids, especially at a young age, your arm might be able to extend a little bit further, but now all of a sudden you don't know how far it goes, and then it's popped.
But I mean, I might not be perfect. I've done this a whole lot, but I do care deeply about this sport, and I care deeply about the people who participate in it. And I would rather be yelled at and know that my intentions were for that person to be safe. I'll take the yelling and take that and whatever, and usually that resolves itself.
Right. You're welcome for still being around to yell at me.
Right.
Yeah.
People underestimate how dangerous this can be.
Yeah.
They really do.
Oh,
really do. Well,
we thank you for coming.
I appreciate it.
There's a lot more I know we could talk about, so we definitely want to have you again.
I can talk forever, man.
We'll get in touch with Angel and get her story.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna like having Angel here. I do.
Awesome. Yeah. And see, and we're trying to broaden more because the general when we first started, we asked people who would like to do it. Of
Yes.
course, we're going to get a lot of fighters.
Yeah.
You know, I still get people say, "Hey,
Sure.
can I come on the show?" Which is, you know, we'll still do.
Yeah, we
that.
want them to advertise their fights
But it's such a niche, narrow field.
Yeah.
The martial arts are way more than that.
Yeah.
I think there's so many directions you can branch this into.
I think we got a Kung Fu guys scheduled. You said.
Oh, you talking about the guy from Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's gonna be interesting because I mean I want to know more about Kung Fu.
Yeah. Well, he does. He's a self-defense that guy too. So a lot of his stuff. That's how he's popular online. But I digress.
The other thing I can say too, anybody who's listening, if you ever want to hear anything more from me or whatever, follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram. On Instagram, I'm MYGA1123 as my Instagram handle. Okay. I'm also on TikTok, and I'm just trying to grow my platforms too.
Yeah.
So
send me all those links in an email or text or whatever, and I'll get them all on the.
I've been getting a lot of good feedback for what I've been doing on Facebook with the. I've been posting on a lot. I'm doing some like coaching videos now that I'm getting good feedback for.
Good.
So awesome. I'm here to help anybody, and anybody ever wants to reach out to me, feel free to direct message me. Absolutely.
Awesome.
And I thank y'all. I'm very grateful to have been here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
And Rennie, don't forget to
break fall.